This one tip is the difference between a garden that survives and a garden that thrives. And it's not fertilizer. It's not sunlight. It's something my grandmother taught me over 70 years ago, and almost nobody does it today. In the next 10 minutes, I'm giving you 7 decades of gardening wisdom. The tips that actually work, tested through droughts, bad soil, and a whole lot of trial and error. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Garden Sage, the channel where we take decades of real gardening experience and turn it into tips you can actually use. No fluff, no gimmicks. Today's video is a little different. Instead of one topic, I'm taking you on a journey from the 1950s all the way to today, decade by decade, sharing the single most important lesson gardeners learned in each era. Some of these tips are things your grandparents knew that we've completely forgotten. Others are things modern gardeners figured out that would have blown their minds. By the end of this video, you'll have 7 decades of proven, tested gardening wisdom, condensed into 10 minutes. And I'm saving the single best tip, the one that changed how I garden forever, for the very end. So stick with me. Let's start where it all began, the 1950s. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe at The Garden Sage. We post tips like this every week, so you never run out of ways to make your garden better. Let's go back to the 1950s. Back then, gardeners didn't have fancy fertilizers or soil testing kits. They had one golden rule: feed the soil, not the plant. My grandmother used to say, "A tired soil grows a tired garden." And she was right. Healthy soil is alive, full of microbes, worms, and organic matter, and that life is what actually feeds your plants. The simplest way to build this: compost, kitchen scraps, dry leaves, grass clippings, layered and left to break down, turn into what old-timers called black gold. No store-bought bag of fertilizer works as well long-term. Crop rotation was the other big lesson from this era. Planting the same crop in the same spot every year drains specific nutrients and invites the same pests back. Rotating your vegetables, even in a small backyard bed, keeps soil balanced naturally. So before you buy anything this season, ask, is my soil actually healthy? If you fix that first, everything else gets easier. By the 1960s, gardeners were paying closer attention to which plants grow well together, a method called companion planting. It's simple. Some plants naturally protect or support others when planted side by side. The classic example: marigolds and tomatoes. Marigolds release a scent that repels many common garden pests, acting like a natural bodyguard for your tomato plants. That's why you'll still see this pairing in gardens today. Another favorite from this era is the Three Sisters method: corn, beans, and squash planted together. The corn gives beans something to climb. The beans pull nitrogen from the air and enrich the soil. And the broad squash leaves shade the ground, keeping weeds down and moisture locked in. 3 plants, each helping the other survive, no chemicals required. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book, and it still works because it's based on how plants naturally behave, not trends. If you only try one thing from this list, companion planting is one of the easiest wins for a small garden. In the 1970s, gardeners started really understanding how to water, not just how often. And this is still one of the biggest mistakes I see today. People water a little bit every single day. That actually trains roots to stay shallow and weak. The better method? Deep, infrequent watering. Instead of a light daily sprinkle, water thoroughly, enough to soak several inches down, 2 to 3 times a week depending on your climate. This encourages roots to grow deep, making your plants more drought-resistant and resilient overall. Timing matters too. Watering in the early morning lets plants absorb moisture before the heat of the day evaporates it. Evening watering works in a pinch, but it can leave leaves damp overnight, which sometimes invites fungal issues. And here's a small but important detail: water the soil, not the leaves. Wet foliage overnight is one of the most common causes of plant disease in home gardens. Simple shift, big results: water deep, water early, and always aim for the roots. The 1980s brought a big shift: gardeners leaning away from harsh chemical pesticides and back toward natural pest control. And honestly, a lot of these methods still work better than what you'll find on a store shelf. Ladybugs, for example, are natural predators of aphids, one of the most common garden pests. Attracting them with plants like dill or fennel can keep aphid populations in check without any spraying at all. Crushed eggshells scattered around the base of plants create a natural barrier that deters slugs and snails, since they don't like crawling over the sharp edges. Neem oil, derived from the neem tree, became popular during this era too, a plant-based option many gardeners use as a gentler alternative to synthetic pesticides. As always, follow label instructions carefully, and it's worth testing on a small area first. The bigger lesson from this decade wasn't really about one specific trick. It was a mindset. Work with nature's balance instead of against it. Encourage the good insects, and a lot of the pest problems solve themselves. By the 1990s, mulching had become one of the most talked about techniques in home gardening, and for good reason. A simple layer of mulch does three things at once. It locks in soil moisture, suppresses weeds, and regulates soil temperature. Organic mulches, like straw, wood chips, or shredded leaves, are especially valuable because they slowly break down and add nutrients back into the soil over time. It's essentially a slow-release fertilizer and weed barrier in one. A good rule of thumb from this era: apply about 2 to 3 inches of mulch, but keep it a couple inches away from plant stems to avoid trapping moisture against them, which can cause rot. Gardeners in the 90s also discovered that mulching cuts down significantly on watering frequency. Since less moisture evaporates from the soil surface, you're not fighting the sun all summer. It's a small, low-effort step, but it might be one of the highest return habits in this entire video. If your garden beds are bare soil right now, this is often the very next upgrade worth making. As more people moved into cities in the 2000s, gardening had to adapt, and that's when raised beds and small space gardening really took off. Raised beds solve a lot of problems at once. You control the soil quality completely, since you're filling it yourself rather than working with whatever's already in the ground. Drainage improves, and because the soil warms up faster in spring, you often get an earlier growing season. This era also popularized vertical gardening, trellises, wall-mounted planters, and stacked containers, proving you don't need acres of land to grow a serious amount of food. Herbs, leafy greens, peppers, and even compact tomato varieties thrive in small raised beds or large containers on a patio or balcony. The key lesson from this decade: gardening isn't about how much space you have, it's about how well you use it. A well-planned 4x4 raised bed can outproduce a neglected quarter-acre plot. If you've ever thought, "I don't have enough space to garden," this is the decade that proved that assumption wrong. And that brings us to today. Modern gardeners now have access to tools nobody in the 1950s could have imagined: soil moisture sensors, weather tracking apps, even AI plant identification to instantly spot diseases or pests. These tools are genuinely useful. They save time and help avoid guesswork, especially for beginners still learning to read their plants. But here's the thing: after 70 years of tips, tools, and trends, the core lessons haven't actually changed. Healthy soil, smart watering, working with nature instead of against it. The technology just makes those same old principles easier to follow consistently. So my honest advice? Use the apps, use the sensors, absolutely, but don't lose the habit of simply getting your hands in the dirt and paying attention. No sensor replaces walking your garden every day and actually looking at your plants. That blend, old wisdom, new tools, is really the biggest takeaway from this entire journey. And it leads perfectly into the one tip I promised you at the very beginning. So here it is, the one tip that changed everything for me. After 70 years of gardening wisdom, decade after decade, it comes down to this: patience beats perfection. Every single tip I shared today, the soil, the watering, the mulching, none of them work overnight. They work because someone stuck with them season after season and trusted the process. Let's do a lightning recap. Feed your soil, plant good companions, water deep and early, work with nature on pests, Mulch your beds, use your space wisely, and never stop paying attention to your plants. If even one of these tips helps your garden this season, that's what the Garden Sage is here for. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment with the gardening tip your family passed down. I genuinely love to read them, and I'll see you in the next video.